As the golden afternoon light bathed the Serengeti grasslands, dry winds swept across the vast plains. A proud lioness led her 3 cubs, teaching them the art of hunting. The cubs followed closely behind their mother, their yellow eyes glistening with curiosity, eagerness, and a touch of weariness. After hours of failed hunting attempts, the family decided to rest. They found shelter at the base of a large, decaying tree in the middle of the meadow, offering some respite from the intense afternoon heat. The lioness lay on her side, listening to the wind and the scent of dry grass drifting around her. The 3 cubs began to play around the tree, scratching their claws into the rough bark. Suddenly, a cracking sound came from the tree's roots, signaling danger. Before they could react, the entire rotting tree tilted and fell forcefully. The heavy weight pinned the lioness's left flank, causing her to roar in agony. The sound echoed across the grasslands, mixed with the panicked cries of the cubs. They ran around their mother, nuzzling her sweaty fur, desperately trying to help, but their tiny claws only scraped the bark. The atmosphere grew tense as golden dust danced in the sunlight. A few hundred meters away, 2 rangers, Daniel and Joseph, were patrolling in a pickup truck. Daniel furrowed his brow as he heard the roar mixed with small cries from the distance. Joseph immediately turned off the truck, and they listened carefully to determine the direction of the sound. Without hesitation, they grabbed their binoculars, chains, and tranquilizer guns, rushing through the tall grass. Upon reaching the site, both were stunned for a moment. A mother lion was trapped under a massive tree, her eyes filled with despair. Her cubs stood behind her, frantic, calling for her. Daniel whispered urgently, "We need to act now, or it will be too late." Joseph nodded, quickly preparing the tranquilizer gun and aiming for the lioness's left shoulder. A soft pop was heard as the needle pierced her skin. The tranquilizer took effect quickly, causing her body to relax, her breathing slowing as she drifted into a deep sleep. Daniel signaled Joseph to check if it was safe to approach. Joseph wrapped a chain around the break in the tree to create a lifting point. Daniel set up 3 chains, securing them tightly to a nearby standing tree. Sweat poured down their backs as they operated the lifting system. The sound of metal and cables screeched as the tree slowly lifted, dirt and wood chips falling like rain. Joseph gritted his teeth, using all his strength to keep the tree from falling back down. Once the tree was high enough, Daniel slipped his hand under the lioness's belly, pulling her free inch by inch until her massive body was completely liberated. The cubs rushed forward, but Joseph gently blocked them to ensure their safety. They carefully laid the lioness on the grass, checking for injuries. There was no heavy bleeding, but her breathing remained heavy and her stomach heaved abnormally. Joseph suspected internal damage. "We need to get her to the vet now," he said firmly. The 2 rangers carefully loaded the lioness, who weighed over 150 kilograms, into the truck. The cubs were placed in a cage next to her to keep her calm. Joseph closed the cage and briefly gazed into the cubs' big golden eyes. The truck's engine roared as they headed toward the Serengeti Veterinary Center, with the sun sinking in the distance. Upon arrival, the veterinary team swiftly moved the lioness to the emergency room while the cubs were placed in a large cage beside the treatment room. The X-ray revealed 2 cracked ribs and significant soft tissue damage, but no internal bleeding. Doctors prescribed painkillers, anti-inflammatory medication, and rest for at least a week. Daniel watched from outside as the medical team worked. Joseph brought a bucket of cold water and fresh meat for the lioness. When she awoke, her eyes were less alert and she groaned softly. She began licking the heads of her cubs who were brought inside to her. She drank the water and started eating the prepared meat. By night, her breathing became more stable and her heartbeat steady. Daniel and Joseph took turns on duty overnight to ensure there were no complications. The next morning, the lioness tried to stand, her legs shaking. She managed a few short steps before lying back down beside her cubs. The cubs happily played around her, staying close. Veterinarians noted that her recovery was progressing faster than expected. Over the next few days, the lioness regained strength and moved more steadily. By the end of the week, she was able to run short distances in the large enclosure. The Conservation Board decided to return her to the wild out the following morning. The lioness was lightly anesthetized for safe transport. She was placed in a large cage, with her cubs in a smaller cage beside her. The truck rolled down the dirt road leading back to the wilderness, where the golden Serengeti grasslands stretched out beneath sparse acacia trees. Upon reaching the site where the lioness had been found, Daniel opened the cage door and stepped back. The lioness stepped forward, inhaling the familiar scent of the grasslands. Her cubs immediately rushed to her, pressing against her side. The family turned to look at the rangers in the truck. Daniel and Joseph waved, sending their silent good wishes. The lioness led her cubs deep into the grasslands, their figures slowly disappearing into the tall grass. Daniel watched until they were out of sight. Joseph softly said, "I believe she knows we saved her life." From the distance, a low, grateful roar echoed toward the two rangers. The sun rose high in the sky, casting its warm light over the Serengeti. As the day began, Daniel and Joseph reflected on their rescue mission. It was a memory they would carry with them forever.